Good evening, members, to this evening's meeting of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. As you will note, we have apologies this evening from Councillor Nick Harvey. No, sorry, wrong councillor. Councillor Grace Watson, I'm in the wrong committee, I apologise. Apologies, Grace. Councillor Grace Watson, who's unable to attend this evening. So, members, I'm going to ask you please to nominate, second and vote on a chair for this evening's meeting. So, if I can please have a nomination. Councillor Bowker? I'd like to nominate Councillor Edwards. There's a nomination for Councillor Edwards. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Thomas?
Yeah, I'm happy to second that.
Members, then, please can I ask you to vote? All those in favour? Thank you very much. That's unanimous. And Councillor Edwards, if you'd like to join me on the days, thank you. And apologies to Councillor Harvey, who is actually in the room. Good evening, Councillor Harvey.
Okay, good evening, everybody. Thank you for electing me as chair. Welcome to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee for the 7th of January. We're not expecting a fire drill this evening, so if the fire alarm does go off, it will be a real alarm. So please leave the meeting by the nearest exit and make your way to gather outside by Runnymede Hall. As ever, the meeting's being live streamed. If we get technical difficulties, we will put the stream up tomorrow, making it available as soon as possible. Just a reminder, mobile phones on silent, please. And if I can ask members just to introduce themselves, starting for the left, if maybe we can start with Jenny.
Just remind you to put your mic on.
Jenny Beaumont, independent person, sorry.
Thank you.
Councillor Nick Harvey, Canvey Island North.
Councillor Carol Sage, Canvey Island East.
Councillor Sue Brooke, again East Ward.
Councillor Lorraine Bredin, Canvey Central Ward.
Councillor Kieran Barker, Tarpots Ward.
Good evening, Councillor David Thomas for Winter Gardens Ward.
Good evening, Councillor Matt Cortez, Thundersley South.
Good evening, Councillor Lorraine Larman, Appleton Ward.
Good evening, Councillor Diana Jones, Appleton Ward.
Good evening, Councillor Kate Knott from Hadley St James Ward.
Good evening, Councillor Sharon Ainsley, St Mary's.
Councillor Ben Wimbledon, Tarpots Ward.
And we've also got our other independent person, Dal Phillipson, who is joining us remotely tonight. Thank you. I don't know if there's a way to make Dal louder in the room, but I could barely hear him. I don't know about anybody else.
So I think, Chair, if it's okay, I think colleagues across the way are monitoring the webcam so that if Mr Phillipson wants to make a comment, he's able to do so. And I think at that point we'll do what we can to amplify as much as possible.
Thank you. Our first item, apologies for absence. So we've received apologies from Councillors McCarthy, Calvert and Watson. I take it there are no other apologies. I think we've effectively dealt with that. Item 2, any members' interests on the agenda for this evening? None? Thank you very much. Minutes of the meeting held on December the 1st, 2025. Are we all happy with those minutes? Agreed? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, our first substantive item then is the car park review. Mr Jarvis, if you could introduce the report for us, please.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, members. Hopefully you've had a chance to read the report before this evening, but I'll give a brief overview of the report to you. So the purpose of the report is to pre-scrutinise the outcomes of a review of the council's car parks and provide recommendations to Cabinet regarding actions arising from that review. The council's priorities and objectives it links with is working for a prosperous future and a greener and cleaner. The recommendations are that 1, that the proposals set out in paragraph 5.2 of the report be approved. 2, that the proposal for the production of a car park strategy as set out in paragraph 5.3 of this report be approved. And 3, any other recommendation the committee may agree. With regards to recommendation 1, please can I draw your attention to point 1 in the table at 5.2, which states further investigation leading to the implementation where agreed of the recommendations set out in part 6 of the steer report. I think it's important to note this point so that there's assurance that further investigation will be undertaken before any recommendations at part 6 of the steer report are put forward for agreement in the future. And I'll be working with the portfolio holder and relevant members as we undertake these investigations. In the introduction, the Council commissioned Steer Group to undertake a comprehensive review of council-owned car parks across the borough in 2024. And it should be noted that Richmond Avenue and Brook Road car parks by the Bowls Club were omitted from the review. But I would just draw your attention to ID B1 on page 53 of the Steer car park review. These recommendations for further investigation would also include those 2 car parks. The review aimed to understand usage patterns of our car parks, benchmark Castle Point against other comparable authorities, identify opportunities for improvements, and inform the development of a long-term car park strategy. Steer delivered its report on the 21st of November 2024, forming the basis for the proposed next steps. So obviously the report is over a year old now, and further details of these next steps can be found in the table at 5.1 of the report. So in terms of the proposed next steps, as mentioned, they are set out in table 5.2. As noted above, the Steer report was commissioned and received in 2024. That being the case, investigation of some of the proposals in that table has already started. These are proposal 3, 4 and 11. And I just want to reassure that no orders or works have started yet. It's just some preliminary investigations. In terms of the car park strategy, in addition to the next steps in the report, a new car park strategy will be produced to ensure long-term future-proof management. This will include maintaining safe, high-quality car parks, providing parking for all vehicle types, electric vehicles, motorbikes, bikes and coaches, meeting the National Parkmark car parking standards, and ensuring effective payment systems, and assessing whether the car parks are in the right locations and have the right capacity. In the supporting information section, there's information on users of our car parks, notes how our car parks support the local economy, leisure, recreation users and commuters, gives information about payment types and the setting of car park charges, how we undertake our parking enforcement, how revenue, the income revenue and how that can be spent and the operating costs. And then finally, there's the risks, financial implications and legal implications and equality implications. I'm happy to take any questions, Chair.
It's good to see we're all keen on questions, but before we start, I just think it's a note from me, because I certainly had questions on this from the beginning, that contrary to what's being said on social media and in the local media, this is a review of the assets of our council in terms of the car parks. We're not setting fees tonight. We're not changing the availability of car parks or changing durations or anything. It's outlining the strategy and looking at the assets that we've got. So, again, any questions to start with? Councillor Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. A few questions. Hopefully I can ask them all in once. The paddocks. So there's no mention of the paddocks at all in the steer report. Yet when we get to the annex report, C1, it's asking us to review the possibility in the future of implementing charges for that car park. So I want to know why there's nothing in the steer report at all. Our steer report.
Thank you, Chair. So Annex 1 is part of the steer report, so it's their recommendation to us.
So right, so I'm going to give my opinion on this straight away. I want to get straight in. I don't believe the paddocks should ever be chargeable to our residents. It serves the community centre and the wider community, and we want people to use our new community centre since it's been done. It's free for the doctors, as it says in the report, and it should continue to be so. But very importantly, Siska House has not been mentioned in that report, and they rely on that as well. During weekdays, it tends to be the older generation that use that. It's always been free, not just this administration or previous administrations didn't dare introduce charges to that. And I would, if it takes me proposing a motion to have charges removed from this report in the future, I'd like to do that. I don't think it should go ahead with any sort of charge.
If I can just interject, we're not making that decision tonight. We're making the decision to proceed with the investigations that would look on the practicalities and impacts of doing that. So we need to be recommending to Cabinet that they look at the impacts and make a judgment.
So, Chair, I do get that. I do understand what you mean, but the general consensus, especially I'm viewing the way the public view it as well, is are we seriously as a council going to think of implementing charges for something that should and has always been free? That's my statement on that, so I can leave it at that.
So, Chair, through you, just to provide some assurance to members, the purpose of the steer review was to do an exercise to consider all possible opportunities, availabilities and different ways of dealing with the assets. It is not making any particular recommendations. The proposed next steps are those that are set out in 5.2 of the report. The whole point of commissioning a report of this of the nature that we have done with steer is that members have all of the information. It's important for members to have all of the information, even if they take it all off the table at the same time, because you need to have the information in order to make a decision about it. So what the report does is a sort of drains up exercise to look at all of the different permutations, all of the different issues that relate to the council's car park assets. One of our key commitments as priorities of this council is around being more commercial with our assets. It is about making sure that we preserve our assets and we squeeze those assets. So it's appropriate that all aspects of our assets are considered by the report. It does not follow that all of the recommendations that are within the steer report are going to be taken forward. As I say, the next steps proposed are those that are set out in paragraph 5.2. I hope that provides some assurance to members.
Yes, thank you.
And if I can just add, I raised similar questions and had some discussions in advance, so I'm trying to make sure that we stick on track for the meeting.
If it also helps, Chair, in terms of making recommendations to Cabinet, there is nothing to stop this committee from making a recommendation to Cabinet that retention of free car parking at the paddock should continue to be a key principle of the future car park strategy. There's nothing to stop them from doing that. So I've made that note.
So in a long way away, that would be my recommendation. Hopefully my colleagues will back me on that. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. I've kind of anticipated that, so I've made a note. And as the debate continues, I'll continue to make those sorts of notes. And then as we get towards the end of the debate, Chair, we'll, if it's okay with you, we'll take a bit of time just to pull those notes together, and then I'll bring them back to the committee for agreement and then for voting in due course.
That'd be very helpful. Thank you. Councillor Larman. Read it, sorry.
That's all right. Thank you.
I should have put my cheat sheet in front of me.
Right. Obviously, I've gone through the report with some detail. I'd like to take issue, first of all, with part 3 on the user survey. page 30 of the report, they talk about having 79 responses for Canvey Island. Now, I've added up the numbers, and I make that 56. So I'm a little bit concerned that that's a very, very low survey. Given the amount of people that actually use the town centre. So I'm actually thinking that, to be fair, this user survey possibly slightly misleading. But that's the point I'd like to make. Could they check the figures on that, please? And if I may, Mr. Chairman, right, I can't see anywhere where we actually surveyed anybody within that run the local businesses in the high streets. And I think that would be a very useful tool to have to put forward to the Cabinet, because it may influence whether any of those businesses would consider not renewing their leases if the car park charges went ahead and that we lose further facilities, because we're quite aware that our high streets are dying. At Canvey, I think we've got more charity shops and hairdressers in our high street than anywhere else. And we've been working quite hard as a council to look at how we regenerate the economic development of the borough. And I actually am concerned that this might be a slightly retrograde step. So I would like to have some information of how the local businesses feel about the possibility of any changes to car park fees. And I have one other question, or point that I'd like to make, please.
Can I just, I don't know if anybody else wants to build on questions about the survey, but I've got a question myself on that. Is there anyone else wants to follow up on the survey? Okay, Councillor Thomas and then Councillor Ainsley.
So how was this survey conducted is my question.
I believe that's in the report, and that they were approaching shoppers.
I must have missed that. Oh, that was it. Just that only. Okay.
Councillor Ainsley.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I can only see reference to survey being done on Canvey Island and nowhere else.
That was something I was going to follow up on. Are we sure that the demographics from the small sample that we had apply across the whole borough?
Thank you, Chair. So at the time that Steer were undertaking the car park review, and excuse me if I've got the terminology wrong here, our planning's local economy team were undertaking other surveys with businesses on Canvey and on the mainland. So they asked us not to sort of overlap with their surveys in terms of the businesses, because they didn't want two lots of people turning up asking them questions. So what we can do is I can get the report on those surveys that planning undertook and bring them before you.
Is that a case that we, bearing in mind the next steps, is that something that we should just draw the attention of Cabinet to?
So, yes, thank you, Chair. You're absolutely right. So I think the recommendation is something along the lines of Cabinet should pay due regard to the qualitative and quantitative parameters of the Steer survey, especially engagement with local businesses and whether this is whether this is sufficient. And therefore the recommendation, the report that appears back to Cabinet should pick up the additional information that Mr Jarvis has referred to.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Knott.
Thank you, Chair. I'm looking at proposal 5 with the introduction of limited waiting, making sure car parks are used for their intended purpose. So I'm thinking about Waterside, the fact that we've had some residents already contacting councillors talking about that, because there's limited time that they can be there. If they are wanting to book a session, stay for lunch and book another session after lunch, that they're not then getting free parking. Would like it as a recommendation that if they are users of Waterside and they're paid up, that they could have a parking permit or something to allow them to be able to stay there and use the facilities for that amount of time.
Certainly think we should note that. Count Cortez.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of questions, then I've got a couple more that will come later. Why has it taken over a year to come to us, the report, and how much did the report cost? Also, what do they define as a car park? I know it seems silly, but areas like Runnymede here haven't been included. You've got 20 plus spaces opposite Riley's at Tarpot. Yeah, I couldn't find on there. I just wondered, what they were looking at.
So in terms of your first question, regarding why it's taken a year for the report to come forward, the deputy leader of the council asked us to defer the report until the local Castle Point local plan had come before cabinet. In terms of your second question, the parking area on the high road is not completely owned by us. It's part of the highway, so it's not a Castle Point council owned car park, so to speak. And obviously what is not included in the report, because it's out of our control, is the on-street parking, which that area is actually controlled by. There's an on-street parking order there, so we haven't included that. In terms of the costs, it's over a year ago, but I will get the costs for you. And the car park here, no, we didn't include the car park here because it was more to look at our car parks that serve the main car parks that were paying display and those type ones, and that sink in. This car park is a bit different because it serves us as officers and yourselves. It serves a leisure centre. It serves other users of the building. So we didn't feel it would be right to include it in this report, in this survey.
Is that not really similar to the paddocks?
That you could make that.
Not being argumentative, but it seems very, very, very similar. Secondly, also it says on page 27, all car parks are locked at 9 o'clock. And then it also mentions how many more people use School Lane, the station car park, during West Ham games. Wouldn't it make sense to have that unlocked for when they come back from the game, or is that a mistake?
School Lane car park's not locked.
No, I didn't think so. No. It just concerns me when reports say all car parks, and yeah.
Sorry, Chair. If I can just kind of make clear, in relation to the length of time the report's taken to come through, this was a recommendation which the Deputy Leader acted on my request, simply because of the fact that this deals with our assets. A number of our assets are mentioned within the Castle Point plan. Therefore, it would be incompatible for Cabinet to be making decisions about its assets until the local plan had completed its process and its period of consultation. So I want to make it clear that there was a decision made by this council, by the administration, on the advice of officers.
Thank you. While we're talking about things that are included in the report, I think you covered this a little bit at the beginning, but I didn't hear it clearly. There are 2 car parks in Brook Road in Benfleet, and this only includes one of them. Can you explain the rationale for that?
Yeah, so the other 2 were admitted at the time, and I'd have to look back just to understand why that was done. Unfortunately, I haven't had a chance to do that today, but I will do. The point I made was obviously it is in part one of the sort of recommendations about enabling the run through from those car parks at South Benfleet and Richmond Park. That the recommendations they've made for the Brook Road car park would also include Richmond Avenue and the Bowls Club car park at Brook Road.
Thank you for that. I just want to bring in Mr. Phillipson from outside, and I've got you again.
Chair, can I just check that you can hear me okay?
We can.
Okay, thank you. Yes, thank you for the report. What struck me was in the car park review how the assets could be used to more widely the aspirations of the council, and in particular the report of the Task and Finish group on cycling that reported to this committee back in June of last year.
We lost the first part of your question there. Can you repeat it? Can you repeat the first part of your question, please, and then?
Okay, sorry, Joe. Sorry about the technical problems. I was interested in how this car parking review could support the wider aims of the council, and in particular, the work of the Task and Finish group on cycling that reported an update report to this committee back in June of last year. That update report referenced the car parking review, but I don't see any cross-reference within the car park review to the work of the Task and Finish group and how car parks can be optimised to support sustainable transport, walking and cycling aspirations. Thank you, Chair.
So I think I caught most of that, but the thrust of it was to make sure we integrate with our sustainable parking, our sustainability programs, and therefore we should consider parking as not just car parking, but include cycling and motorcycle parking as well. Is that a fair summary?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
I'm just going to come back to Councillor Bredding. I think you're top of my list at the moment, and I've got you, Councillor Ainsley.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm quite interested in the fact that in the borough, we've got some major supermarkets that offer free parking, both in Hadley, certainly there's a couple in Hadley, and at Northwick Park on Canvey. And I would like to know what impact, again, this is going to have on the viability of our high streets should the parking charges be increased, because I think it's quite important that we would lose a lot of shoppers going to the high street if they're asked to pay more. Simple as that. And I think it's fairly safe to say, certainly in my lifetime, it's very unusual for prices to come down. So if we're looking at streamlining prices across the board, certainly if it's electricity, they tend to be streamed upwards rather than downwards. So I think, we just sort of be aware of that, and perhaps just be aware of the economic challenge this could bring to our high streets.
Do you want to come back on that, Mr. Jarvis?
Yeah, thank you for the question, and that's quite correct. I think when we're talking to Cabinet about increases in car park charges, we do need to make sure that we are supporting our local economy, and I think that's reflected in the report as well. So it's interesting that the report notes that there's a kind of a lack of other transport forms, and so more people are reliant on vehicles and on car parks, and obviously as has already been mentioned about the other forms of transport that can go into car parks. So yeah, that's important. So.
Take away from the negativity of the questions that I'm asking, I was very pleased to see on page 6 of 5.2, item 6, the discussion to perhaps use the seafront more in the out of season times for various things. And I thought that was really something that was very good, forward thinking, and could very well be of use to the local economy. So thank you for.
Can I just try and bundle some of this together a little? Because that was more of a note than a question, I think. Yeah, I agree. But just sticking to your theme of the fees, are there any more questions that people have got on the potential to change fees? Okay, right. Then we'll maybe bundle those together now, and I've got a potential recommendation to come in with. So, Councillor Cortez.
Thank you, Chair. A couple on the fees then. It mentions emissions-based charges as an option. I don't personally like that as an idea. EVs are heavier than traditional petrol and diesel vehicles, so therefore are causing more damage to the road surface. You could argue they should pay more because they're doing the damage as opposed to a lighter vehicle. That was more just a recommendation. Secondly, when you look at things like School Lane, or the station car park, is there an option of doing some smaller discounted spaces so that we could increase capacity for people that are going to the station in city cars? And also, do we have motorcycle parking at School Lane, or sufficient motorcycle parking at School Lane? Because why should someone who turns up in a small smart car pay the same as someone who turns up in a Range Rover? Thank you.
Mr. Jarvis.
So in terms of the motorcycle parking, that is a good point. We don't have any motorcycle parking at any of our car parks, and that is something that we would need to look at as part of the recommendations going forward. In terms of charging for the size of a vehicle, that's not something that's been raised with me before, but if we can take that forward as a recommendation to investigate, then we can do that. So
come back to me then.
Thank you. Yeah, it was in the size. I think it said the minimum sizes were 5 metres long. Obviously, the width you'd have to keep relatively the same, but you could squeeze several small city cars into a couple of the traditional spaces. The other thing that I would say with regards to the fees on School Lane particularly, C2C is obviously a far cheaper railway to use rather than Greater Anglia. Therefore, we have an awful lot of people that come from out of area to use the cheaper train service. The fact that C2C is now been privatised as well, it's likely that it's going to stay cheaper. Government owned, it's going to stay cheaper. As part of our key policy of making things greener and cleaner, surely we should encourage people to use their nearest station. So we should charge people coming from out of the area more for parking and discount Castle Point residents that want to use the station so that they're spending less time driving.
I don't know if you want to come back on that, but that's sounding like another recommendation to explore to me.
That's exactly what I was going to say. So I think the thing to mention about School Lane is it's now, thankfully, after COVID, back to capacity. And most of the complaints or queries that I deal with from the public is what are you going to do about increasing capacity at School Lane? So it's not an easy thing to do, but we can certainly look at that. So you could say that it's not so much about increasing the capacity, it's about making the capacity the best. So, yeah.
Councillor Knott, do you still want to come in with your somewhat ageing question now?
Thank you. I just want to look at 5.2, paragraphs 3 and 8, feels slightly contradictory. Mentions upgrading, replacing machines, and making all payment methods across those machines a cash, card or app. But then we're looking at School Lane car park and looking at possibly removing the cash facility. That sort of goes against the other one.
I'll hand that back to you, Mr. Jarvis.
Thank you for the question. So in terms of cash payments at School Lane, School Lane is our biggest income car park, and only 2% of that income is paid by cash. So that's the reason for that, to look at that. It's either taking cash away altogether or reducing the amount of cash collections that we do to remove the cash. But it was noted that the car park is very minimal cash payments because most people will park up, they'll use the My Permit, or they'll buy tickets for the whole week. So they prefer to do that on their card because it's one of the only 2 car parks that take card payments as well. So yeah, so that's the reason why we were looking at possibly removing cash from the use of cash from School Lane.
Can I just ask a follow-up that's quite obvious on that? Does it cost us more to collect that cash than we bring in as cash?
I'd have to do the sums on that, but in School Lane in particular, it probably wouldn't be far off in terms of the equation.
I think, again, maybe that's something we want to look into. I've got Councillor Thomas, Ainsley, Bowker, Cortez and Jones in that order.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to make a recommendation around Oak Road car park. Now, it's not a million miles away from the Knightswick car park. However, the price differences are huge. So for 1 hour in Oak Road is £1. Knightswick, 1 hour, currently 30p. I would like to recommend or put forward an idea that for a trial period, let's say 6 months during the summer, that Oak Road is brought into line with Knightswick and see how the income is generated. And I'm sure you get a lot more footfall and car parking in that part of the town centre, which encourages a lot more for the local businesses in that area.
Oak Road. Can I maybe try and wrap up what we're saying on fees a little?
So on fees, I would like the Oak Road fees as a trial period recommendation to come into line with the Knightswick fees. So it's lowering the fees of Oak Road. It is generally, every single time I've gone down there, you're lucky if you see 1 or 2 cars in there during the weekday. I think it discourages residents from using that part of the town centre. I believe it will increase footfall massively to bring it in line with the same charges that we charge in Knightswick.
I did a bit of reading before this, and I'm just wondering if we can do this, but there's a lot of research out there on other councils' experience, and I personally think we should recommend to Cabinet that they look at that in the context, because we keep talking about fees and we're not talking about time and money, we're just talking about money, and that you can be smarter than just fees. But I think I personally would like us to look at what's worked elsewhere directly and what the research says it does for businesses.
I'll just quickly come back on that, Chair.
Of course.
So Canvey has been classed, or parts of Canvey, as a deprived area, lower incomes. I don't think Canvey residents like higher fees. Well, they certainly don't. None of us do. So this is why I want to make that recommendation to be looked into, to do a trial period at lower fees, see how the money balances out, what we collect using lower fees, and how the footfall, does it go up? Does it encourage more people into that part of town? And will the businesses benefit from us encouraging it that way? So that's why I want that recommendation specifically.
Yeah, just to be clear, I wasn't trying to overrule it. I'm saying let's look at what's worked elsewhere, and I'm all in favour of experimentation. Is experimentation and testing something that we can do readily?
The changing of fees has to go through a legal process. So it's not to say it can't be done, but we need to understand how that legal process works and how we can change it. The one thing I would say about Oak Road, obviously it's chargeable during the week and it's not chargeable at weekends. I think from what I understand is the car park's quite full at weekends and not during the week. So,
surely that would strengthen my case if it's free over the weekends and people are using it. Lowering the fees during the week would encourage more people to use it during the week, surely. That's my simple thinking.
It's something that we would need to test.
Well, I would like that tested, please. Yeah. Thank you.
Agreement. I like a bit of that. Councillor Ainsley, I have you next.
Thank you. I'd like to investigate the possibility of starting a Castle Point parking pass, which allows you to park for up to 3 hours in all of the council-owned car parks, excluding School Lane. If it's payable by monthly direct debit with a discount, that's guaranteed income for the council, regardless if they're using the car park space at all. So I think that's a good way. I mean, Southend do this, and I think it would work really well. And then people can scan their pass when they arrive at the car park and not need to worry about trying to find a payment method.
That's been noted, and we'll pull the recommendations together at the end. Thank you. Councillor Bowker.
I've actually got questions. Sort of two-part. How will displacement of cars into residential streets be prevented and managed? And what are the cost implications for such prevention or management?
So the displacement of vehicles into residential areas would only happen, obviously, if the car park was made something else. I can't comment on that because I don't know what plans there are for making our car parks into anything else. But yeah, go on.
I just think it's also, Councillor Bowker, this is about the assets, not car parking per se. So, the question of displacement of vehicles onto side roads is really lengthy and complicated, but it's out with the reach of this report. This report is about our assets. So I'm not entirely sure that we're going to be able to answer that question for you this evening. Yeah, I think that's probably more helpful, because I think the question would depend on the circumstances and on the site. So I think it would be beyond the wit of this committee this evening, Chair.
Sorry, there was a secondary part. Again, this might be unrelated, but other than income, which everyone's talking about, how would success be measured? What would be an indicator of a measure of success?
Mr. Jarvis.
Sorry, a success of the...
Of any forward planning of any revision, etc., how would success be measured?
Success would be measured through surveys with residents to see how they're, and users of the car parks, to see if they value the improvements that are made, how it's benefited our businesses in our shops, how it's supported our residents in where they want to go and where they want to park. So it's trying to provide something for the residents that's easy for them to use, and easy for them to get to the places that they want to by parking in our car parks.
So would that be dependent on some kind of a review after a policy has been put in place?
Yeah, you would be looking at, obviously we'd have to implement whatever is agreed to be implemented. So we're looking a few years ahead on that, you know.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, in terms of wrapping that up into a recommendation, because I think it's a great question, we would be asking Cabinet to do something like set success metrics for each change based on the key goals for that change, because I don't want to presuppose, because some of them could be, you know, help shift parking from one place to another or get appropriate use of a car park, etc. Each change needs to be made deliberately and with reference to success criteria. I've got Councillor Cortez.
Thank you, Chair. With regards to the night's work, parking is refunded if people spend £3 in Sainsbury's. Who pays for the parking? Do we pay, or does Sainsbury's? Is part of the question. And then secondly, why just Sainsbury's in the night work and not the smaller businesses if they wish to partake in it? And also, could we look at rolling it out into other areas of the borough if it's been successful there, so that people that spend X amount in Hadley would get their parking refunded, and the other areas?
Mr. Jarvis.
So it's only Sainsbury's, as we know. The process works by when you purchase the tickets at Knightswick car park, you get a ticket and a receipt. So you take the receipt into Sainsbury's and they give you back the value of the parking. We would need to understand, obviously, how that would work with the other shops, and we would need to understand how that would work on a wider basis. We'd also need to understand, obviously, if the businesses can actually afford to do that, because obviously it's coming out of their purse, isn't it? So
just to come back, so Sainsbury's refund us the 100% of what the parking amount is?
Yeah. So,
if I can just jump in there, Councillor Cortez, that's a decision which Sainsbury's has made off its own back, goes back very many years. It's not a council initiative at all, so it's entirely something that has been put forward by that particular retailer.
Is it something we could look at for, particularly, I'm going to say Hadley, where you've got restaurants and we want to encourage people to use it? Maybe they would wish to partake in a certain scheme where they could refund the parking.
Something we could investigate. Because I say, it's dependent on the businesses paying the money back, obviously. So I'm sure they would be concerned about paying more than they're doing. So,
Councillor Jones.
Sorry, but the other point there is obviously that what we do want to do is we want to look at methods where we can encourage people to park in our car parks to use the restaurants and the shops. So that we must look at other solutions as well as apart from that.
Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to link recommendation 3 and 10 and just ask about the payment types and the technology to be introduced for the different types of payment. I'd just like to ask, was there a particular reason why we need to use My Permit app as alongside or as well as the card contactless as two different options? Can we not just go for contactless? Because a lot of people these days easily use their debit or credit card for contactless, whereas if you're using the My Permit app, it means that people have to download it. I know that a lot of people who commute often or use car parks probably have that. I just want to know why we wouldn't kind of streamline it across the different car parks by just having contactless.
Mr. Jarvis.
So part of we want to offer residents as many options to pay as they possibly can. So that's why we've only have 2 car parks that take card payments. So we want to increase that across all our car parks to give them that option. My Permit is widely used, I would say, and I think in particular with School Lane, people will park up and they'll pay whilst they're walking to get to the train. Whether that's because they're running late or not, I don't know, but it is widely used. But we want to make sure that at all our car parks, people have got every option that they can have to pay. So
I'm just going to bring Mr. Phillipson in again.
Hello, Chair. Can I just check my sound again?
We can hear you.
Okay, I just have a brief question on the operating costs for the car parks, in particular repairs and maintenance, which I don't think are mentioned in the review.
Could you repeat that for us? Because I think we lost a critical word.
I had a question about the operating costs of the car park service and in particular the costs of repairs and maintenance.
Okay, did you catch the question?
I hope that the following answer is answering the question, but at 6.7 of the report, it gives the total cost of the operating of the car parks. And includes repairs and maintenance, yeah.
So the figures we've got do include repairs and maintenance within the report. Councillor Ainsley.
Thank you, Chair. Question in 2 parts, really. I am concerned about parking provision in Benfleet High Road. Even when the car park is free at Richmond Hall, people don't want to park there because they think they're going to get charged. If they know they're going to get charged, they don't want to park there at all anyway. But it's causing a health and safety issue in the High Road because people are parking on the zigzags. Now, we've asked for enforcement down there, and they say it's short-term invasion, and it's right next to the crossing, and there's been a death on that crossing already. So anything that is going to stop people using the car park, I think is a bad thing, or we need more enforcement at that particular area there. And part two of that question is, have we considered, and I've read in the report about multi-storey car parks, and you're proposing one at King's in Canvey Island at Knightswick Centre. Is it possible to look at the possibility of a multi-storey car park in maybe at Richmond Hall or even at the station car park? Thank you.
Mr. Jarvis.
So firstly, on the enforcement side of things, I'll take that up with SEP if there's people parking on the hash lines, and see what they're doing about that. That's the parking enforcement people. In terms of multi-stories, I would suggest that, do you say Richmond Hall or Richmond Avenue? Richmond Hall. Building a multi-story is quite an expensive action, and it also needs a lot of size. I'm not sure how, and I'm not a planner or a builder, I'm not sure how we would build a multi-storey at School Lane, noting as it's on a hill. And the other aspect you've got to take into consideration is to build that sort of thing, you'd have to take the car park out of action for quite a significant point of time. So unfortunately, people will try and find a way to get around not paying a parking fee, but that's their choice. But yeah, building a multi-storey might be difficult. But
if I can just follow up on Benfleet High Road, and I don't know if this is within scope of what we're saying, but my understanding is that currently from tar pots through to the anchor, so the whole length of the high road is treated by SEP as one parking zone. And residents have recently highlighted the fact that if they shop at tar pots and then move halfway down the high road and shop there and then stop for a drink at the pub and park there, they get parking tickets because they've been in one parking zone for the whole time. Now, I've not managed to validate that yet, but I think we should maybe review the zones, because particularly for people with reduced mobility, that's on-street parking, not our car parks. Okay, thank you for the clarification, but maybe we can take a side note.
If it helps, Chair, I think what I've captured from conversation, it sort of goes back to the point that Councillor Bowker was starting to make, which is that we can ask Cabinet to consider local displacement issues and behavioural traits of car park users as part of any changes that may be implemented, and hopefully that covers the point.
Thank you for both clarifications. Councillor Cortez and Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. With regards to the enforcement, have we looked into the cost of replacing physical enforcement with ANPR cameras? Is it something that would be possible? There's other car parks I know in Essex that obviously do it, but I didn't know if there was different rules. Would that work out far more cost effective than hiring boots on the ground?
Government don't allow ANPR enforcement within car parks unless it's used as part of the... ANPR can be used for monitoring car park usage, and it can be used for pay-on-exit car parks. So, for instance, the car park at the back of the railway station in Chelmsford, that's a Chelmsford Run 1, so that's an ANPR system, but you have to pay to get out. You can't use ANPR specifically as an enforcement tool, unfortunately.
So just to follow up on that, does that mean that if we switch to pay on exit rather than pay on time, that we would be able to automate the enforcement?
Yeah, because on pay on exit, you would have to pay before you can get out, so you've not got an option. What if you didn't have barriers and you just left the what's the name? You've come into park and pay. So that would then trigger the enforcement part of it. If that makes sense. You can't specifically have ANPR as an enforcement tool without any other payment method alongside it.
You could do it if we did pay on exit.
Yeah.
So do I take it that your recommendation may well be that we consider
we do pay on exit? Yeah.
Later. I've got Councillor Jones next.
Thank you, Chair. Just going back to recommendation 3 on the works to upgrade and replace all pay and display machines. You've mentioned the operational costs in the report, but obviously this is future works, if I understand it correctly. So what will be the cost of this to the council? And secondly, is this budgeted for at all? Thank you.
Mr. Jarvis.
So, as mentioned earlier when I gave the briefing, it's something we're currently investigating and looking at the costs. So, if members and Cabinet are wanting to take that forward, then we'll bring the costs forward for that. Go to Cabinet, yeah, go to Cabinet. So.
Are there any other questions at the moment? Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. It's regarding recommendation 11 about the solar panels. Could we have an answer as to when the investigation will be completed, if it hasn't done also already? Thank you.
It's just recently got underway because we're obviously looking at solar lighting, so it's not been completed yet. Hopefully we will have some more information within the next 5 to 6 months on that one.
Can I just clarify, we're not just looking at solar lighting, we're looking at the sort of French government mandated type gull wing solar, which would also provide us with sort of potential to export power and power EV vehicles off of the systems.
We can make that a recommendation.
Yeah, because that's how I'd interpreted it. Because so, thank you, Councillor Cortes.
I think you've already answered this. With regards to proposal point 4 with the EV chargers, are we in talks with a company to run them, or would they be council owned and run, or will it be a third party?
I'm currently having conversations with Southend Council about a contract that they have, and seeing if we can link in with that contract. Again, it's very early stages, so most of these ones where the supplier takes a charge for the use of the machine, or they'll take the whole charge for the electricity and the charging. But it's at early stages, so but obviously we want to run that out across the majority of the car parks where there would be a sensible use for that.
Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. Regarding one of the recommendations, and it's for Canby Town, is to ensure that the blue badge spaces at the paddocks are free from obstruction. I was a bit concerned to read that there were 2 of the disabled bays that are being obstructed by a container. Can you tell me if this has been remedied?
So at the time the survey was undertaken, it was when the paddocks was being refurbished and the container had been placed across the 2 bays, so that's all resolved now.
Thank you. If I can just follow up on disabled parking, I note that the disabled parking and all of the other data in the consultant's report benchmarks us against other councils based on per capita provision. But it takes no account of demographics. Can you confirm that we've got, on average, an older population and an ageing population in Castle Point? And can we recommend to Cabinet, in that case, that we take that into account in allocation of disabled spaces? Because with an older population, we're more likely to need more spaces.
I'll take that as a recommendation that you want to take forward. So,
thank you. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. And following on from that, regarding disabled bays, we need to have enforcement to make sure that disabled bays are kept for that particular purpose, rather than people just deciding that because there is a space available, that they will therefore use it.
Yeah, any blue badge display bay will be enforced if there's not a blue badge in it, in the car.
That's just reminded me of one specific thing on Richmond Hall car park. With some widening, that car park's been converted from, the entrance was moved and there's a lot of people use the former entrance as a parking spot. And I wonder if we could also explore whether there's potential for an extra disabled space there, because it's at the end where the disabled bay is. It's not currently suitable because there's not space, but it would only require a removal of a bit of pavement. So if we are looking at them, that could be a good spot.
Okay. This is the area next to the toilets? Okay.
Disabled spaces are lined up nose in or rear into the toilets, but this is adjacent to the chemist shop that's there. Councillors, are there any other questions on this item? I think we may need to take a very brief break to assemble these. Are we happy to agree a quick break so that we can assemble these, come back with recommendations? Okay, thanks very much. I think that means we're going to pause the live stream, and you can then all breathe or dance or whatever you wish first. So we'll take a 5-minute break now. Okay, thank you for your forbearance. It seems that we have actually between us managed to come up with 17 different recommendations. So for the purposes of actually being able to scrutinise those effectively before we recommend them to Cabinet, we're currently typing those up. We will project them so that we can see them and actually consider them properly. But with your agreement, I therefore propose that we continue with the next item of business and return to this one. Is that okay with you all? Okay, thank you. So in that case, I will bring us on to item 5, which is an update on the medium-term financial strategy. Mr. Wasco, if you could take us through that.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Evening committee. The purpose of this report is to provide the committee with an update on progress with refreshing the Council's medium-term financial strategy, herein abbreviated to MTFS. It will hopefully provide the committee with assurance on the process being undertaken and that we are on target for the Council meeting next month on the 11th. At that meeting, the proposed budget will be presented to Council for debate and, subject to any motions on the evening, on that evening, approval. This report covers the Council's general fund, that being in layman's terms the pot of money that funds the majority of the Council's activities. The Council's other main fund, the Housing Revenue Account, which covers our social housing and council housing, is not covered by this report, but the Housing Revenue Account is subject to much of the same processes. This report talks in various places about revenue and capital spend. Revenue spending is our day-to-day spending, whereas capital spend is where we're either buying or significantly enhancing assets such as a building. It is important to make that distinction because different rules apply to each type of spend. As a reminder, the Council's budget is nothing more than thousands of assumptions. Naturally, some of these will have greater certainty than others, and given work starts on the budget many months before the forthcoming year begins, and some 19 months before the forthcoming year ends, it is inevitable that things will change and ultimately be different from the budget that does get approved by Council next month. So moving into the content of the report itself, first within the report I wish to highlight a change to the format for the MTFS. Previously the Council's MTFS covered the forthcoming 3 years. This time I've decided that the MTFS should be extended by a year, so it will now be the forthcoming 4 years, those being 26-27 through to financial year 2029-30. This will make the Council consistent with the majority of other Essex councils, and this will be important when we start getting into the detail of local government reorganisation. Next, I want to talk about the process and the work undertaken to date. As detailed within the report, work started back in September, and since then the Financial Services team have met with all the budget holders to undertake line-by-line reviews to ensure accuracy of budgets and to make necessary changes. In that time, Cabinet have received 2 briefings on the budget, and the Council's leadership team have discussed with Cabinet priorities for the remaining life of this Council prior to local government reorganisation. Alongside this work, a review of Council's earmarked reserves has been undertaken. As a reminder, these earmarked reserves are held to cover specific risks or to fund planned future expenditure. The review is completed to ensure that the reserves we hold are still appropriate to be held and are held at a reasonable level. Alongside all of this, the capital programme is being compiled and a final briefing to Cabinet is being made early next week on the final draft position for them to then make a recommendation to Council next month. So, moving through the report, the next section outlines some of the changed assumptions since the last published MTFS. As already said, the budget is nothing more than thousands of assumptions, but some of the assumptions do have greater impact than others. Possibly the single largest one is around the staff pay award. We are now making a higher assumption prior to that previously, and in part this is because the actual pay award in the current year that was agreed nationally was higher than we had budgeted. Alongside this, we have new assumptions regarding pension fund contributions, which is due to the revaluation that has been completed of the pension fund by Essex County Council, as well as for other key items such as CPI inflation, gas and electric inflation, and government funding. These are detailed within the report. At this point, I just wish to highlight in paragraph 7.6 of the report, there was a sentence that reads, currently is the actual CPI inflation rate and updated projections from the Bank of England. I'm not quite sure what I was trying to say when I drafted that, and this sentence in isolation doesn't read very well. But I think the point I was trying to make is that we use CPI inflation rates as set out by the Office for National Statistics for the most part, and for future years we will use Bank of England projections. Moving on to the next section of the report, we have the updated revenue position. The first table in paragraph 8.4 reflects the material favourable movements since the last published budget, whilst the table in paragraph 8.8 will show the adverse movements. The most significant of these movements are explained within the report, and I'm sure the committee will recognise some of the lines as they relate to items that have come through this committee late last year. Adding to the adverse movements, there are some new lines proposed which will be delivering against the priorities identified by Cabinet. Whilst many of Cabinet's priorities are already funded within the base budget, there are some areas where there is a desire to do more, and these are shown within the table in paragraph 9.2. Bringing all of these movements together, the table in paragraph 10.1 shows a gap in the forthcoming year of 353,000. Work is underway to close this gap and balance the budget, and this work will be concluding early next week. This will allow us to ensure that we can meet all of the required deadlines and publish the budget in time for meeting of Council next month. Finally, I wish to mention the capital programme. A number of the proposed schemes are either a continuation of existing schemes or are schemes that were presented previously in the MTFS but with a future year start date. There is some new schemes, such as CCTV and those related to climate action, and again, I believe members of the committee will be familiar with these. At this stage, there are some other schemes that are under consideration, which may or may not be included within the final programme. Final decisions on the capital programme to be recommended to Council for approval will be made a briefing with Cabinet next week. Chair, that concludes the points I wish to draw out from the report, but I'll be happy to take any questions from the committee. Thank you.
Thank you. I think describing it as a cluster of assumptions, you're underselling the amount of work that gets into refining those assumptions. So thank you for the report. Councillors, have you got any questions? So Councillor Ainsley, then Councillor Cortez.
Thank you, Chair. In April, the standing charge for electricity is going to reduce. Does the council benefit from that? And is that in your calculations, or will it help to bridge that gap somewhat?
For your question, we've been given updated forecasts by the Crown Commercial Services, which is through where we buy our energy, and for both gas and electric, I can confirm they are reducing.
Part 2 of that, is that included in the calculations?
At the stage that this report was drafted, no, it wasn't, because we didn't have that information at that moment in time.
Councillor Cortez.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, as you say, there's loads of assumptions in it. Have we planned for the fact that LGR might not happen due to Labour's fondness of changing their mind over stuff?
There is no assumption that it may not happen. There is an assumption that it will happen, and then there will be some costs associated with it.
Would that leave us in danger if they change their mind and defer LGR indefinitely?
If LGR was to be deferred indefinitely after we've set a budget for it, we would end up with an underspend against that budget.
Hi. I have a couple of questions on the report to Cabinet on the 23rd of December and how that sort of links into the report that you've presented. They're specifically around the age debtor analysis that you have in there. And I've got a couple of questions there. I mean, one of them is around the housing benefit. So you've made a comment that that is a waiting decision from DWP. So there's large amounts outstanding on the books there. What's the process and what's the timeline for that to be resolved?
So there's a number of individual cases rather than it being one overall process. the larger amounts are typically in relation to where there's been identified fraud of some nature. DWP investigate the fraud as they fund the housing benefit, but it will sit with us until DWP have determined how they want to take that forward. If DWP find a way to recover, determine that they want to recover the fraud and put in place activities for that to happen, then we retain the amount as owing. If DWP have determined that they wish it to be written off, then we will write it off at that point. I would just want to stress, though, that whilst in the Q2 financial update report, it is technically an amount that's owing to us at this moment in time, it is ultimately reimbursed by DWP.
The other question I had about the age debtor analysis as well is the amount of the debtors that are on the right-hand side of the chart, you know, the 365-day people. I mean, are they essentially being underwritten, or what's the situation there? Because often when you get to that kind of period of time, you know, you're actually sort of accepting it, or, you know, I just wondered what the position was with that.
So there's a variety of things with that. Some of that debt that's that old will currently be subject to repayment agreements and is in the process of being repaid. However, some of it, you're right, it might be subject to the legal process. It might have already gone through the legal process, and it might just be that we are struggling to actually recover it. If we do struggle to recover it, it will be ultimately deemed a bad debt and written off. Within the budget, there's always provision for bad debts made. And there's an assessment and a calculation that's undertaken. We do it as part of the budget setting, we do it as part of our year-end accounts. That says we've got this much debt we think might become bad, therefore we need a provision to allow for that, and then we make sure that the provision is set at the right level.
But it is being actively managed, because obviously, you know, it's quite alarming when you look at that chart. It's not what you normally expect to see.
Absolutely, the debt is all being actively managed.
Thank you.
Sorry, may I just ask one more question? The other question I had was on the forecast underspending on staffing in that report. So what's behind that? Is that a decision that's been made not to appoint to certain positions? Has there been a reorganisation? Are there problems with recruitment, for example? I just wanted to understand what that is.
So it's some of those. It is some struggles with recruitments for particular roles. I've had it in my own team where we had to go back out to advert for a few different roles a couple of times. And sometimes it's just the timing difference between someone saying they're going to leave and giving us their notice, and our ability to advertise for a role, recruit, do the interview process. That person, if there is someone that we can appoint, has to then work their notice period. And there's inevitably a timing gap there as well. So it's a variety of factors.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Cortes.
Thanks, Chair. In Table 2, you've put a cost of 33,000 for the street lights that we pay. I believe we pay Essex Council because we've got them back on. You said earlier that the cost to us for electricity has gone down. Does that mean we get a rebate from Essex County Council, or are they earning a profit out of us?
I would have to double check the exact arrangements in place, but I do recall it was based on the number of kilowatt hours used, so our actual usage, and I believe it is based on the actual cost, but I would have to double check that to be 100% certain.
Councillor Brady.
Thank you. On Table 2, looking at the table itself, you have a confidence rating of low under the capital programme revenue implications. Could you sort of give us some background as to how you come to the confidence ratings, please?
Yeah, so as it does briefly mention in the report that it's an informal judgment that I have made myself. And for that particular item, I've rated that one low because I don't, at the time of writing this report, have that full totality of what the capital programme may look like. Because if there are other schemes that get added in, those could well have the revenue implications. Those revenue implications are costs of servicing any debt with the associated borrowing, or likewise making provision for the repayment of that debt as well as the interest.
Yes.
So, since writing that report, would you change that confidence rating at all, or does it at the moment still remain as low?
So that particular one would remain, I would say, somewhere between low and medium, subject of that. After the conversation with Cabinet next week about what the final draft programme will look like for recommendation to Council, that's when that would become high, because we'll be able to use the actual proposed capital programme to then work out what those implications are.
I don't see any other questions from the floor, so just a very quick, but it's a small line items, but again, table 2, it seems to be a focus of ours. Trees have trees and service reviews on there, both fall to 0. I mean, trees lists actions. Are we just saying all of the actions are we complete and then we don't have to do anything in subsequent years?
So this is an additional budget to some existing base budget that is in place. So there's a need to undertake further surveys and catch up. So there's been some surveys undertaken during 2025, but we need to go further and complete the surveys, and inevitably there'll be some actions that come out of those. Once we've done those surveys and made sure that we have that full understanding of the trees, the existing base budget should be able to continue servicing any maintenance needs at that point. With regards to service reviews, it's a cost. It falls to 0 in 27-28 because at that point it flips into table 1 and is a favourable movement of 300,000 at that point.
Thank you for those clarifications. Any other questions? Councillor Ainsley, I've got you too, Councillor Brooke.
Thank you. Tree surveys. I thought trees were the responsibility of Essex County Council. What do we do regarding tree surveys?
I might allow Mr. Jarvis answer that one, as it's his service area.
So when I came into post the beginning of last year, I took on the Parks and Open Spaces. I asked the team the question, can I please see the audits for our tree stock in our Parks and Open Spaces? We didn't have any, so I initially put in a recommendation to undertake a tree audit of all our stock. So the amount there that's been mentioned in that table is the balance of the works that needs to be done. In the last year, we've surveyed all trees in our Parks and Open Spaces on what we call the high-risk areas, which is footpaths, next to buildings, etc. What we're doing the following year is to survey the rest of the tree stock in our Parks and Open Spaces. So it doesn't include highways.
Are Essex actually responsible for that, though, for the tree safety? And can we not claim that back off of them if they're not doing it?
No, these are trees in our owned Parks and Open Spaces.
Right, so we are responsible.
Yeah.
Oh, okay,
yeah.
Thank you.
So as opposed to their trees on the highway. Councillor Brooke.
Yeah, again, on table 2, Canvey Lake. Can you explain, sorry, what the 50,000 is for?
So I believe there's a report coming to March Cabinet, and then within that report, it's going to possibly suggest that the council will take over the. Sorry, I'll allow Mr. Jarvis to answer because again it's his service answer, and I'll just make a hash of it.
So we're currently out to tender for water quality management of Canvey Lake. We've obviously had to put a budget amount in the budget report so that members are aware of that. That tender and the timeframes for that tender meant that we couldn't do the full report on Canvey Lake in February, but obviously I provided Lance with what we've budgeted for, so he's put that in as an estimated figure.
Thank you.
Members, are there any additional questions on this item? Okay, with no other questions, is this report noted? Okay, thank you very much. I would suggest then that we, rather than just continuing to item 6, as we've now got the recommendations all typed up, that we do a bit of audio-visual magic, get them up on the screen and return to item 4, the car park review, for reviewing our recommendations. We're just trying to get these up on the screen at the moment, so bear with us.
Thank you, Chair. These are now projected on the screen behind us. I think
we're just trying to make them a little bigger for the benefit of everybody. Okay, if Ms Hutchins, if I can ask you to read through them, thank you.
so. Thank you, Chair. I've recorded the points, members, in the order in which they arose during the debate. I'm proposing that the resolution that I'm going to invite the Chair to ask you to vote upon is that you recommend that the Cabinet should take into account the points which you've raised this evening, and therefore they can be kind of considered en bloc. The first is that there should be retention of free car parking at the paddocks. I think I've just put free parking. I think it's inherent that it's free car parking, but it should be free car parking. Number 2, that the quantitative and qualitative parameters of the steer survey, especially engagement with the local businesses, should be reviewed and considered whether this is sufficient. That's the point made by Councillor Redding. The members of the Waterside Farm Leisure Centre should be allowed free parking beyond a minimum period if they're attending classes. Number 4, that the car park review should also extend to other sustainable methods of transport, such as electric vehicles and cycles. Number 5, that the impact on retailers and other high street traders when setting car parking charges should be considered. Number 6, that the opportunity for discounted charges for smart cars, other small vehicles and motorcycles at School Lane in particular should be explored. Number 7, that the opportunity for discounted charges for borough residents at School Lane car park should be explored. Number 8, that the cost of collecting cash at School Lane be considered before any decision to remove, that should say cash, not case payments from that car park. That number 9, that there should be a trial of fees at the Oak Road car park to bring it in line with the Knightswick car park to understand how this affects usage, income generation and impact on the local economy. Number 10, that Cabinet should consider the experiences of other authorities in terms of the local economic impact of tariffs as well as fee income. Number 11, that the opportunity of introducing a season ticket stroke prepay arrangement be considered. Number 12, that Cabinet set measures of success for any change implemented and ensuring benefits are realised. Number 13, that the opportunity to implement a cashback scheme akin to that run by Sainsbury's on Canvey for other town centres be considered. 14, that local disbursement issues and behavioural traits of car park users be considered as part of any changes that may be implemented. Number 15, the use of ANPR for pay-on-exit solutions be considered. Number 16, that the proposed use of solar panels take into account opportunities to export energy, e.g. to electric vehicle charging as well as powering machines, lighting, etc. Just wait for the screen to catch up. There we go. And then 17, that the numbers and allocation of blue badge spaces across the borough be reviewed and enforced accordingly. Members, if you're content with that, if there are any changes, please let me know.
Are there any changes? Councillor Knott?
Thank you, Chair. Just for number 3 with Waterside, are we able to put using the facilities as well as attending classes? I'm just thinking if they're stopping for lunch or anything, not actually attending a class at that point, but stopping and using the facilities.
That change.
Thank you.
Councillor Armand, did you? No, you're okay. I picked up 2 things. Point 11, it's kind of implicit, but let's be explicit, that the opportunity of introducing a borough-wide season ticket or an all-car park season ticket would be my suggestion.
Yep.
And on 17, which is the blue badge one, that I think we've effectively replicated what's in the report already, unless we add with something about. Could you just put 17 up on the screen? Right. So 17, the numbers of blue badge spaces across the borough be reviewed with reference to our demographics. Because the point is we've got a relatively old population in the borough, so potentially more need. And Councillor Ainsley, you've got one.
Yes, thank you. Can I just go back to 11? But it's still not saying exactly what I was suggesting. That we have a car park pass that is borough-wide, that is paid for by monthly direct debit.
Do you mean one pass covers all car parks?
Yeah. So you get 3 hours parking, discounted, with all car parks owned by the council other than School Lane.
I think the danger.
Can we go via the chair? So Councillor Thomas, and use your microphone.
Sorry, Chair, I'll use my microphone. So just to get this straight, in answer to my question on the mic, that you want it borough-wide, so one payment covers all car parks rather than a specific car park.
That's correct, other than School Lane.
Right. Okay.
Councillor Bowker, and then Councillor Cortis.
I can sort of see that some car parks will be more heavily used than others, and if we want to encourage local car parks to be used, I think it needs to be more specific, to be honest with you, especially if you have a sort of regularly shop here or regularly shop there.
Councillor Cortis, and then I'll let you come back.
Thanks. I'd question how you could enforce the 3 hours in a car park. You'd need constant enforcement at all times. I don't think that would be cost effective, personally.
Could work on the pay on exit basis that we've already recommended, though. So Councillor Ainsley.
Yes, it'll work on the ANPR pay as you exit. I forgot what I was going to say now. Sorry.
What I would suggest, members, is if you make your recommendations too specific, then that kind of limits the consideration from Cabinet. So by allowing Cabinet to consider a borough-wide prepaid sort of season ticket arrangement, it gives them the opportunity to consider other parameters, which might not necessarily be, for example, monthly direct debit, but it gives them the opportunity to consider the whole breadth. So if it's okay with you, members, I think that the drafting that we have currently at number 11, and Sonia's just whizzing through that now, if we just introduce the words borough-wide, save for School Lane, ahead of the words, just there, Sonia, season ticket, then I think that should do it.
Are there any other refinements that we wish to put forward? Okay, in that case, I move this motion and I look for a seconder, please.
I'm
Councillor
happy to
Thomas.
second this.
Thank you very much. Okay, members, are we happy to put this through to Cabinet? Okay, so that's dealt with the our recommendations. So we now need to come back to the original recommendations set out in paragraph 3.1 of the report. Can I have a seconder for that? Councillor Jones, I saw you first. Thank you.
I will second that.
Okay, and members, are we happy to put forward the recommendations in paragraph 3.1 of the report? Agreed. Thank you for that. Okay, we will now move on to item 6 of our report of our agenda, which is that we have here as a regularly scheduled item an update from the work of the Climate Policy and Scrutiny Subcommittee. Obviously, we've already reported on the series of meetings that led to the Climate Action Plan, and there's no further update from that committee at present. So that takes us on to item 7, which is to look at our work plan going forward. That has been circulated. Are there any suggested changes or further suggestions? Councillor Cortez.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to set up a task and finish group looking at what we could recommend to the Cabinet so that Council can support people locally with mental health issues, see what options are available, certainly at this time of year. It's obviously a concern sort of borough-wide or nationally, but see if there's anything the Council can do to try and help people.
I think it's a good idea. If I can just confer briefly on procedure, because I don't know if we can just off the bat set up a task and finish group without potentially having a report.
Through you, Chair. Certainly, if this is something that the committee wants to explore, it can set up a task and finish group and ask for evidence to be brought to that task and finish group. What I would suggest, however, you need to be quite specific in terms of the remit in terms of reference of that task and finish group. Mental health, for example, is not something which is a function of this authority. Therefore, it's not something directly within our control. Primarily, it's obviously an NHS function supported by colleagues in the voluntary community sector. So it's not something which this council can directly control. So it would, I would suggest that terms of reference would need to be worked up, and perhaps that could be taken offline, Chair, and then brought back at the next meeting.
Yeah, that.
Consent with that, so we'll take that as an action point. And Councillor Cortez, if I can ask you to sort of liaise and lead on that. Thank you very much. And Councillor Thomas.
Yeah, just a quick one. Subject matter February 2026. BYOD. What is that?
It's bring your own device policy for IT. So
it's spelt wrong because it says devise. I just wondered what it was. It threw me right off. Thank you.
It's an excellent proofreading eye there. But yes, it's the council's bring your own devices policy for IT. So with if there are no additional requests or clarifications, looking around the room, no, none. So is the work plan agreed, members? Agreed. Thank you very much. Well, that concludes our business for the evening at 8:41. Thank you for your time.